Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So as the fighting continues in the Gaza Strip and the bombs keep falling and the death toll keeps climbing higher and higher with bodies piling up in the streets and open burials and the war just continues to go on, a lot of people are wondering, uh, when will it all end? Will it end? Where it's going to lead? What's going to happen as a result of this war in Gaza? And as the hospitals keep on pleading with the Israelis to give them water and food and to allow them to have electricity, the things they need, just so that civilians can survive. And the number of elderly and babies that are dying because of lack of water and electricity and the hospital being basically everything but shut down. Where is it all going to go? Where is this all going to lead? What is really going on in Gaza, and why is this happening? Who's at fault? And what's the truth behind this atrocity, massacre that is going on in Gaza? Is Hamas really the reason that all these civilians in Palestine are dying right now? Or is Israel just trying to take advantage of the situation and just clear out as many Palestinians from that land and push their way into more territory, claim more land, and push more Palestinians out? So we're going to look at those things today. We're going to find out what's really going on, and we're going to look at some of the history of the land back there and of the peoples, and find out really why this horrendous war is taking place in Gaza. We'll be right back. Okay, good afternoon, good evening, and hello to everyone. And thank you for visiting my channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and also comment, because I want to hear what you have to say about this and about all my videos that you'll see coming up. Comment so that they can get around, other people can see them, and it helps with the ministry. Okay, so this is going to be a special show today. Basically, what we're going to do is talk about the war in Palestine, how it started, why it started, who's at fault, if any, and where it's going. One thing I want to say about this war in Palestine, you cannot get a real perspective on what's going on without consulting the Bible, and that's just true. You need a biblical perspective right now in order to understand what's actually happening and taking place in Palestine. So, let's look at how, first of all, the state of Israel became a state, because that has a lot to do with this whole myth. And the reason why they created the state of Israel is a whole nother subject. A lot of people think it was to give the people of Israel a home. Well, that may have been on the surface, but there were other agendas beneath the surface by other people, rich, powerful people, who had a whole other agenda for creating the state of Israel. So let's we're gonna get into all of that in just one moment. So don't go anywhere. Enjoy the show. Sit back. The few videos you're gonna have to watch and see. Very interesting, very powerful, very informative videos. I think I'm gonna really enjoy this show. Okay.
Is your historical context, because in 1917, something happened that was unprecedented. The European world decided, well, to back a 67-word document called the Balfour Declaration. Put up, Mr. Balfour. Mr. Balfour, and also a man named Lionel Walter Rothschild at the center of the debate. They get left out of this. I'm about to put these gentlemen squarely where they belong. The Balfour Declaration, which resulted in a significant upheaval in the lives of Palestinians, was issued on November 2nd, 1917. The declaration aimed to establish a Jewish state in Palestine into a reality when Britain publicly pledged to establish a national home for the Jewish people there. The pledge is generally viewed as one of the main catalysts of the Nakba, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in 1948 and the conflict that ensued. It is regarded as one of the most controversial and contested documents in the modern history of the Arab world and has puzzled historians for decades. The Balfour Declaration, which means promise in Arabic, all right, was a public pledge by Britain in 1917, declaring its aim to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. That is a fact. The statement came in the form of a letter from Britain's then Foreign Secretary, Arthur Balfour, addressed to Lionel W. Rothschild. It was made during World War I. This was 1914 to 1918, and was included in the terms of the British mandate for Palestine after the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire. The so-called mandate system set up by the Allied powers was a thinly veiled form of colonization and occupation. They colonized, forced colonization. The system transferred rule from the territories that were previously controlled by the powers defeated in the war: Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria, to the victors. The declared aim of the mandate system was to allow the winners to administer the newly emerging states until they could be independent. That was the first proclamation. The document was controversial for multiple reasons. Number one, it was, in the words of the late Palestinian American academic Edward Said, made by European power about a non-European territory, and a flat disregard of both the present and the wishes of the native majority resident in that territory. In essence, the Balfour Declaration promised Jews a land where the natives made up more than 90% of the population.
Okay, so I want to just streamline what he just said. The Balfour Declaration. This is Algeria's publication by Zina al-Tahane. Now, it was made during World War I, 1914 to 1918. It was included in the terms of the British mandate for Palestine over the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire. The declared aim of the mandate system was to allow the winners of the war to administer the newly emerging states until they could become independent. In the case of Palestine, however, unlike the rest of the post-war mandates, the main goal was of the British mandate there to create the conditions for the establishment of a Jewish national home where Jews constituted less than 10% of the population at the time. Why was it controversial? The document was controversial for several reasons. Firstly, it was, in the words of the late Palestinian American academic Edward Said, made by European power about a non-European territory and a flat-out disregard for both the presence and the wishes of the native majority residents in that territory. Secondly, the declaration was one of three conflicting wartime promises made by the British, When it was released, Britain had already promised the Arabs independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1915. Why was it issued? Some argue that many in the British government at the time were Zionists themselves. Others say that giving Palestine to the Jews would be a solution to the Jewish problem. Of course, it was Hitler's point of view. In the mainstream point of view, however, control over Palestine was a strategic move. Britain had to side with the Zionists in order to keep the United States and Russia in the war until victory was assured. The Zionist community in Britain and the British government officials were Zionists themselves. The impact it had on Palestine. The Balfour Declaration is widely seen as the cause of the 1948 Palestinian Nakba, when Zionist armed groups who were trained by the British forcibly expelled more than 750,000 Palestinians from their homeland. The state of Israel, in order to set that up, they had to go in there and take by force. Now, if they signed a document, how do you sign a document giving away a piece of land that someone's already sitting on, living on, been living there for centuries on that land, and don't include them in it? Don't consult them, nothing. You just make a deal with the Rothschilds, and you just give the land away. And remember, this was after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. So the land was being split up, and the British happened to get Palestine. Because these people had homes on that land. And it wasn't just Palestinians. It was Christians, Muslims, Jews, living there peaceably together until Zionism came in.
I'm a witness. I know the Arabs are very good. No problem till the Zionist movement starts. My grandmother told me before the Zionist movement starts, they babysitting each other, the kids. They borrow from both each other like brothers, like brothers. The idea of Zionism to take away the land from the Palestinians and the Arabs is starting the whole fighting. Not Arabs the problem, not Jews the problem, not Judaism, not Muslim, only Zionism.
Now you gotta understand, Zionism is not Judaism. And you can't put the two together. Because Zionism is a political party or movement. Judaism is a religion. So you have two sets of Jews there in Israel. You have the Jewish sect that follow the Torah, that follow Judaism, and then you have Zionist Jews who really are basically truly atheists. They really don't believe in the Torah or the Bible or anything. They think it's all a grand myth. They just moved in there and took the land at gunpoint and put people out of their homes, killed a lot of people, setting up the state of Israel.
You implied that Israel has the right to exist because of what happened to the Jews during World War II. Why in Palestine? Don't the Palestinians too have the right to a secure homeland? Why do they have to suffer and make way for the Jews?
Look, we can go back and we can argue over the birth of Israel, the justice of the birth of Israel. We can argue over whether or not there should be an Israel. There is an Israel today. There's a strong Israel today, a vibrant Israel that is not going to disappear. Palestinians have missed opportunities. There is an opportunity today. I don't see any useful purpose in arguing over what justifications Israel has to exist. Israel has all of the justifications in the world to exist. And I don't even think it's appropriate to question the reason why Israel exists. Thank God that there is at least one Israel. An Israel where Jews can live if they want to. They don't have to live there. But if they need refuge, if they want to live in a country that is a Jewish homeland, that's fine. And I think, as I said before, all of us should be delighted that we happen to be around at a time in this world when there is this Israel. To deny Zionism, to reject Zionism, is about as racist an element as you can get. Why should all of these people, Palestinians and others, deserve a homeland if the Jews can't have a homeland? Have not the Jews suffered enough all of these?
I suppose, and then it wasn't missed on anyone in the audience that Mr. Blitzer was deploying that same familiar lawyer's tactic. The question that was put to him was, if we accept the legitimacy of the state of Israel, why don't we also accept the legitimacy of a Palestinian state? And then Mr. Blitzer went on to tell us all the good reasons why we should accept the legitimacy of the state of Israel, something which, by the way, I concur with. But that still doesn't answer the question. If one does accept the legitimacy of the state of Israel, why doesn't one also accord the same rights to self-determination and statehood to the Palestinians? That was the question, as I understand it, that was put to him.
A small percentage of the Israeli population, several thousand strong, they are united by religious zealotry and ultranationalism. They oppose Israeli democracy and any peaceful dealings with the Palestinians.
If we want to understand Rabbi Kahane, his message was that we need to go to war because, in fact, what will bring our redemption is not prayer. What will bring redemption is war. But today we're going in exactly the opposite direction. Instead of war, there's peace now. There's an attempt to prevent war at all costs. And if we can force the army to go back to being offensive, an army of revenge, an army which cares about Jews more than anybody else, then we'll be able to bring the final redemption in the only way possible, through war. War now.
They were a warlike tribe that lived deep in the heart of Asia. And they were so warlike that even the Asiatics drove them out of Asia into Eastern Europe. And to reduce this so you don't get too confused about the history of Eastern Europe, they set up this big Khazar kingdom, 800,000 square miles. Only there was no Russia, there were no other countries, and the Khazar kingdom was the biggest country in all Europe. So big and so powerful that when the other monarchs wanted to go to war, the Khazars would loan them 40,000 soldiers. That's how big and powerful they were. Now, they were phallic worshippers, which is filthy. I don't want to go into the details of that now. It was their religion, the way it was the religion of many other pagans or barbarians elsewhere in the world. Now the king became so disgusted with the degeneracy of his kingdom that he decided to adopt a so-called monotheistic faith, either Christianity, Islam, the Muslim faith, or what is known today as Judaism, really Talmudism. So, like spinning a top, he said, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and he picked out so-called Judaism. And that became the state religion, and he sent down to the Talmudic schools of Tel Aviv and surah and brought up thousands of these rabbis with their teachings, and he opened up synagogues and schools in his kingdom of 800,000 people, 800,000 square miles, and maybe 10 to 20 million people, and they became what we call Jews. There wasn't one of them that ever had an ancestor that ever put a toe in the Holy Land, not alone in Old Testament history, but back to time, the beginning of time.
And you got people now who might say, "Oh well, Israel was always promised to the Jews by God. They're God's people. That's their land. That's their homeland." Yes, now we have to agree with you that God did give the Jews that land. That is the land that God gave to Abraham's descendants. And also, the Jews, after the Romans destroyed Israel, demolished it, and Jesus said that there would not be one stone left upon another, and they demolished the land there, and they were exiled and kicked out of Israel. God kicked them out and exiled them or spread them out all across the world. God said that the Messiah would come and bring them back together. God never sanctioned anybody to go to the devil, because that's who the Rothschilds are. They worship Satan. They're the richest family in the world. And what did Satan say? He told Jesus, he said, all these kingdoms of the world belong to me, and I will give them to you if you just bow down and worship me. You think Satan's still to make that deal to people? He's making it to people in the music industry every day, and people are buying it. They're taking the deal. Just like the Rothschilds took the deal back then and became the head representative for his new kingdom here, for Satan's kingdom, and they control the world's wealth. So you go to the devil to make a deal with the devil over Israel. It's the state of Israel in Israel that's already occupied by people there. And that didn't turn out so well for the Palestinians. Yeah, so when they made the Balfour Declaration, they started sending the Israelites, not Israelites, but they started sending the Jews over there to their new state of Israel, and they started sending them over there to occupy that land. That didn't turn out so well for the Palestinians. And this is how the whole conflict started. And this is the part that no one wants to talk about. You don't see it anywhere. They don't talk about it on the news. They don't relay it on social media. They don't talk about this. But this is what started the whole war between Israel and Palestine, was that dumb declaration to make Palestine a state of Israel. Israel was never a state or a nation. Israel was always a people. Always a people. God gave them that land to occupy. But again, they were exiled. It was the Ottoman Empire. The Palestinians were living there with some Muslims and Christians, were living in the Ottoman Empire. It was overthrown by the British. And the Jews made a deal to support them in the war by bringing America into the war and keeping them in the war until victory could be assured. And when they gave them Palestine, they also promised the Palestinians that if they fought with them against the Ottomans, that they would gain their independence, which that hasn't happened and still hasn't happened. So they sent in the Jews, and this is what happened.
A mountain full of trees of figs and grapes, and it faces the main road to Jerusalem.
This is a story about what happened here in 1948.
We are only 750 people, and everybody knows each other. I came from a big family. We lived a good life. We never expect to be massacred. It was a black spot in the history.
That history has been carefully concealed, purposefully distorted, and in the West, largely forgotten.
They put our village as an example with what they can do.
The massacre in this village was one of many in a series of catastrophic events that became known as the Nakba, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were violently displaced from their homeland in order to create the state of Israel.
In May of 1948, a new Jewish state, Israel, was born in a bath of blood.
The borders of Palestine have been changed forcefully over time, but historically, this region has been home to Palestinians for centuries, with hundreds of villages and thriving cities. One of them being the central city of Jerusalem, with holy sites important to Jewish, Christian, and Muslim people. By the late Ottoman Empire, Palestinians living here were overwhelmingly Muslim, with minority Christian and Jewish native populations too. But regardless of religion, Palestinians were often referred to as Arabs, people of the Arabic-speaking world, despite their distinctive culture.
Palestinians have long distinguished themselves as Ahl Palestine, or the people of Palestine. They developed a distinctive Arabic accent, they developed regional food, regional dress, and family ties.
But by the time World War I began, several key political forces were competing for control of these lands. First, there was a growing Arab political movement, looking for independence from the Ottoman Empire in hopes of a unified Arab state that would include Palestine. Then there were Zionists, a political group that had one main goal: the creation of a Jewish state. Zionism was a response to an increasingly brutal climate for Jewish people, particularly in Europe and Russia, where there was a massive wave of anti-Semitism, including large-scale attacks in the late 1800s and early 1900s. After briefly considering other areas for a new state, including Uganda and Argentina, Zionist leaders decided on Palestine because of its connection to early religious history. But there was a third key group with political interests here: the British. Control of the region would allow them to expand their spheres of influence and protect trade routes to India. During World War I, since both the British and the Arab independence movement wanted Palestine, they decided to go after the Ottomans together with an important pledge. Through a series of letters in 1916, an Arab leader and a British official agreed that if Arabs would help the British fight the Ottomans and give the British economic and other foreign privileges in Arab lands, in return, the British would recognize and support an independent Arab state. Soon, the Arabs started doing their part in revolting against the Ottomans, making it easier for the British to move in. But the next year, the British issued a new declaration and betrayed the Arabs.
In 1917, Lord Allenby conquered the Holy Land, and the Jews were promised a national home in Palestine.
Without consulting the native Palestinian population, the British issued what's known as the Balfour Declaration, supporting the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. So instead of supporting the idea of Palestine as part of a unified and independent Arab state, the British pledged to help secure this land for Zionists. It was a strategic move. This declaration opened up a pathway for Britain to gain power in Palestine,
under the guise that it was supporting the self-determination of another people, of a people in Palestine who don't reside there yet.
As for Palestine's majority Arab population, the declaration referred to them as non-Jewish communities, who would be given civil and religious rights, but not political rights. A few years later, after World War I ended, Britain gained control of Palestine through a mandate that also required them to put the Balfour plans for Jewish settlement in motion. And they did. Between 1922 and 1931, the Jewish population more than doubled. The migration helped the Zionist movement gain steam, and a slogan took off: a land without people for a people without land.
And it sends a message to Western leaders that the people who had been living in Palestine for generations could just be easily moved elsewhere. The idea was that those inhabitants weren't a people with ties to that land.
Palestine was, of course, a land with a people. In 1931, there were more than 850,000 Palestinian Arabs in the region, still the vast majority. But with the rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party in particular,
hate became a rallying call.
Jewish flight from Europe became even more urgent, and Palestine started to see the biggest wave of Jewish immigration yet. Violence broke out, rooted in tensions over land. Jewish settlers purchased swaths of fertile land and evicted tenant farmers, creating a crisis of hundreds of thousands of landless, dispossessed Palestinian Arabs. Though Palestinians fiercely rebelled against both British colonial forces and Jewish settlers, they were brutally crushed by the British.
They put in Palestine more troops to repress that rebellion than they had stationed in India at that time, all of India.
These troops killed thousands of Palestinians, including many of their leaders, and the British began training and arming Zionist militias to suppress the rebellion too. But the rebellion continued. So, in an attempt to prevent further Palestinian resistance, the British began to limit Jewish immigration into Palestine. This ended up angering Zionist extremists, leading to more violence. So, in 1947, after decades of trying to manipulate both Palestinian Arabs and Zionists to keep their control over Palestine, Britain gave up and handed the question of Palestine to someone else.
To the United Nations also came the problem of Palestine. In recent years, this small country had been the scene of disorder and bloodshed.
They figured, there is this new thing called the United Nations. Here, in your lap, Palestine, first gift. So the United Nations has now to figure out, how do you disentangle this thing that the British helped create?
A UN special committee proposed the land be divided into two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state, with Jerusalem as a separate UN-controlled entity. It was called the Partition Plan of 1947. The plan shocked Palestinians.
We could not accept the Partition Plan because at that time the population we were almost 2-to-1.
But the plan proposed giving over half the land, and often the most fertile areas, to the Jewish state.
From a purely pragmatic perspective, the Partition Plan didn't make much sense for Palestinian Arabs.
That wasn't the only problem with the plan. Within this proposed area of the Jewish state were hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs, including both Muslims and Christians, who had lived there for generations.
On a moral level, the idea of making hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs minorities in their own homeland seemed unjust and unfair.
In November 1947, the UN put the plan to a vote. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, and after lobbying from US leaders and Zionists, the UN voted in favor of partition.
And finally, a momentous decision to partition the Holy Land's 10,000 square miles.
Britain announced their mandate over Palestine would end on May 15, 1948, even as Palestinians continued to reject the UN's decision to partition the land.
After the partition took place, in 1947, we really were scared something might happen to us.
By the end of 1947, Zionists had several well-developed paramilitary forces, the largest one known as the Haganah, and more extremist militias like Irgun. On March 10th, a couple of months before the British mandate would end, the Haganah adopted what was called Plan Dalet, or Plan D. On paper, the main goal was to gain control of the Jewish state, as laid out in the Partition Plan, while also defending Jewish settlements outside of the borders. In reality, that's where the majority of these operations took place, outside of the UN's proposed Jewish state. Some carried out by Haganah and others by more radical militias. Many of these operations focused on isolating Jerusalem and the roads to it. A set of brutal instructions called for the destruction of Arab villages by setting fire to, blowing up, and planting mines, especially those population centers which were difficult to control. In case of resistance, it called for the population to be expelled outside of the borders of the state, villages emptied, and for the occupation and control of Arab villages along main transportation arteries. One of the most widely publicized village massacres happened here in Deir Yassin.
We lived in Deir Yassin, which is about 4 miles west of Jerusalem.
91-year-old Dawood Assad was there the day of the massacre and was 18 at the time.
We saw one night, the night before, a movement of lights. armored trucks moving around, moving like this. So we know that something is wrong. That's why we knew that something is going to happen to our village.
On April 9th, 1948, extremist Zionist forces, executing Plan D, closed in on Deir Yassin, even though the village had made a local peace pact with neighboring Jewish settlements.
Friday morning, they attacked us. My uncles, they were shooting at them, and I was there loading the gun for them and shooting. We fought about almost 2.5 hours. They found my uncle, and they put him on the wall, and they shot him 8 bullets in cold blood. My grandmother, she went in the village to see my mother. On her way, she got shot. My brother Omar fell from her shoulder to the floor, but the floor was a concrete one.
Dawood escaped through a trench.
I went down all the way down here like this. So it was 4 hours walking to Jerusalem.
To this day, the archive of the Israeli army refuses to release many of the images and intelligence reports on Deir Yassin. But one UN report detailed circumstances of great savagery, including women and children stripped, lined up, photographed, and slaughtered. Roughly 100 people, largely children and the elderly, were killed in the village. As for Dawood, he later reunited with the group of Deir Yassin captives in Jerusalem, including his sister and mother.
My mother says, "Where is your Uncle Radwan?" He says, "He was shot." "Where is your grandmother?" He said, "He was shot, and Omar was with her." So everybody has a commotion, you know. Where's Fatima? Where's Ibrahim? Where's Amaryam? Where is David? Where is Ahmed? Where is Ismail? I'm a dream about it, you know.
News of what happened in Deir Yassin spread quickly, with far-reaching effects.
The Zionist militias used it as a propaganda tool to tell people about it everywhere. The idea was that if you don't leave, we will do to you what happened in Deir Yassin.
Stories came out about women being raped, about babies being killed, and induced a great deal of fear among the Palestinian Arab population, many of them fleeing as a result.
Jewish troops routed Arab forces from the city of Haifa.
After taking Deir Yassin, Zionist paramilitary groups cleared major cities, including Haifa and Jaffa, and took hundreds of smaller villages and towns too. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were forced to flee, pouring into neighboring states as refugees. Plan D became the blueprint for carrying out the ethnic cleansing of historic Palestine to make room for a new state. And on May 14th, the day before the British mandate ended, Zionists declared this state as Israel. But the creation of Israel didn't end the Nakba. Neighboring Arab countries that were overwhelmed by Palestinian refugees immediately went to war with Israel.
Now united in a League of Arab States, they are insistent that the entry of refugees into Palestine must be ended.
The fighting lasted for months. Arab armies eventually lost while Palestinians continued to be killed and forced out throughout that time. Palestinians who fled often carried only enough to stay away for a few weeks, hoping they'd eventually return home.
A lot of them locked their doors, put their key in their pocket, and then moved to safer ground. When you leave the house and you take your key with you, it's because you're planning to go home. In the case of the Palestinians, those refugees weren't allowed to return.
Refugees trying to return were often shot at. Zionist paramilitary operations also tried to prevent them from returning again by destroying the villages.
That act of preventing their return compounded the Nakba. So the Nakba is both the forcible displacement of Palestinians from their homes and lands and country, as well as preventing them to return once the fighting was over.
Palestinian society was dismembered, crushed. More than half of the Palestinian people became refugees, stateless, dispossessed of their land.
Over time, the State of Israel covered up the physical evidence of an Arab Palestine. Place names were often changed from Arabic ones to Hebrew ones. The Jewish National Fund embarked on a massive effort to plant thousands of acres of pine forests and recreational areas on top of hundreds of ruined Palestinian villages.
Even though these forests have now grown into big pine trees, Palestinians have not forgotten their homelands.
While we know that roughly 6,000 Israelis lost their lives in the violence of the Nakba, records for Palestinian deaths weren't kept. It's estimated to be around 15,000. By the end of the Nakba, roughly 750,000 Palestinians had been forcefully expelled, and more than 500 villages destroyed. Though the UN's Partition Plan allotted Israel 56% of the land, through the Nakba, Israel captured 78% of the land. It was everything except what's now known as the occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip. Today, that's up to at least 85% of the total area, turning 6 million Palestinians into refugees without a homeland. It's why, around the same time that Israelis are celebrating Independence Day, Palestinians are out protesting on May 15th, holding up keys as a symbol of the homes they lost and the hope to return. For them, the Nakba isn't just a moment in history. It's a catastrophe that never really ended.
I'm a dream about it, you know. We lived a good life till 1948 when we were displaced.
So, you see, that is actually how the state of Israel came into existence. That's the bloody truth of it. And this is why the Palestinians are fighting so hard to retain their land. I know people are referring to, they're lining that up to say that Israel has a right to take that land because God gave it to them. But God exiled the Israelites. If you remember, Jesus told the Jews, he said that Rome would destroy Israel. They would destroy the land. They would destroy Jerusalem. And that not one stone would be left upon another. They would tear the temple down. And the children of Israel, it would become desolate, which means no one will be living there. The children of Israel will be scattered. God exiled them because they didn't know the time of their visitation. And they set out to kill the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And God exiled the Jews. And but Jesus said that he would bring back the children of Israel. He would gather back the 12 tribes to himself when he returned. That he would implement a state of Israel where he set up his kingdom. That Israel would not just be for the Israelites, it would be a place for all nations. Jerusalem is not a place just for Jews. Jerusalem was always meant to be a place where all nations could come and worship the one true and living God. A place where God said, where people could come and pray to him and he would hear them. That Jerusalem was the place for all people of all cultures to come and pray. So here's the big question. If God gave Israel that land, are the people occupying it right now Israel? Are they the seed of Abraham? Because that's who God gave that land to. Are they the seed of Israel? Are they the seed of Abraham? And do they have a rightful claim to that land? Okay. So you got two types of Jews, the Sephardic Jews and the Ashkenazi. Okay. No one really questions the authenticity of the bloodline of the Sephardic Jews. It's the Askanazi Jews, which is questionable, because after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, it is believed that Ashkenaz hijacked the religion and the identity and migrated over to Europe. Now, they've been using that identity for a long time to get away with a whole lot of stuff because they figure, you know, as long as we're God's people, no one's going to really lay a hand on us. As long as the Christians believe that we're the chosen people. And as long as we can keep throwing the Holocaust and crying anti-Semitic or anti-Semitism, we can basically get away with whatever we want to get away with. And that has been the model or the way it's been for almost 100 years. Well, 1948, I guess, close to 100 years. And so they've been using that as a justification not to be held to the same standards as the rest of us. All the Ashkenazi Jews, the seed of Abraham. Well, let's find that out, because in the Bible, the Askanazi Jews actually mentioned.
Have you ever wondered about our origin and where we come from? Surely, this question has crossed your mind at some point in life. Who am I in terms of ancestry? According to the sacred scriptures, what is my lineage, and from which people am I descended? In our video series, The Origins of Peoples According to the Bible, we explore in detail each ethnic group, but now we would like to discuss a little more about the 3 sons of Noah. In this video, I bring to all of you a comprehensive study of Genesis chapter 10, which deals with the lineages and ancestors of all humanity, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the origins of humanity. After the great flood with Noah and his family, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, left the ark to repopulate the world. God commanded them to populate the entire earth with their descendants, filling it with new people. This story is recorded in Genesis chapter 10, verses 1 to 32. Japheth, Noah's son, is the ancestor of many nations. His children are the progenitors of the Indo-European and Asian peoples. His wife, Askanazi, is the mother of Asians. If you're interested in learning more about Japheth's wife as well as the wives of his brothers Shem and Ham, we have a video about them on our channel. Japheth's sons, who are of Japheth's lineage, are Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Gomer's sons are Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Javan's sons are Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. The descendants of Japheth colonized both the European and Asian continents, giving rise to several nations known as Japhetic peoples. These peoples include the Greeks, Sumerians, Scythians, Medes, Iberians, Celts, Phrygians, Etruscans, Italics, Vikings, and Germanic peoples throughout Scandinavia, forming the Japhetic part of Europe. Being the parents of such Japhetic peoples and their wife, Ashkenaz is considered the ancestor of the Northern European or Northern European peoples, including the blonde and red-haired peoples. He is recognized as the father of Scandinavian tribes and neighboring regions. Javan is considered the father of the Greek peoples, while Riphath is considered the ancestor of the Iberian peoples, that is, the Spanish and Portuguese. The ancient Celtic tribes are all direct descendants of Riphath, one of Japheth's grandchildren. Moreover, Asians are also descendants of Japheth, especially from Japheth's wife, according to some scholars of human origins. It is said that the name of Japheth's wife changed after the events of the Tower of Babel to something similar to Asia, and she became the matriarch of Asians. Togarmah, Japheth's grandson, is considered the father of the Asian peoples. Togarmah means broken or pulled. According to the prophet Ezekiel, Togarmah is the father of many peoples from the far north. The biblical reference is in Ezekiel, chapter 38, Gomer and all his troops, the house of Togarmah in the far north, and all its troops, many nations with you. An interesting observation is that Asians are the most numerous in terms of population. They represent the largest part of the world's population and are considered the descendants of Togarmah. The house of Togarmah encompasses many peoples from the far north, that is, from Asia. There are numerous peoples that have their origin in Togarmah, but I will mention some of them here: the Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, Proto-Mongolians, Turkmens, among many other Asian peoples who descend from Togarmah. This was the lineage of Japheth, which expanded and became numerous, as prophesied by Noah in his lifetime. We have a video on our channel that addresses the origin of Asian peoples. If you are a white person of European descent, you are a descendant of Japheth. And if you are a person of Japanese, Chinese, or any other Asian descent, you are also a descendant of Togarmah and therefore a descendant of Japheth. Now, let's focus on the lineage of Ham, whose name means burnt or the color of something burnt or dark. He is the ancestor of peoples with black skin. The sons of Ham are Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Cush had sons named Rama, Sheba, Sabta, Sabtika, and Havilah. Rama was the father of Sheba and Dedan. Cush was also the father of Nimrod, a mighty man on earth who defied God. He was responsible for the construction of the Tower of Babel. If you are not familiar with this biblical account, we have a video on our channel that addresses this subject. It is important to highlight that the name Cush literally means black or of black color. Cush, the original son of Ham, was the ancestor of many peoples. Mizraim, another son of Ham, fathered Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathrusim, Casluim, and Caphtorim. Canaan, the youngest son of Ham, is the one who received Noah's curse. It is relevant to emphasize that the curse was directed at Canaan and not at Ham, his father. Canaan fathered Sidon and Heth. The descendants of Ham primarily inhabited Africa. Besides the African continent, they also settled in Australia and India. Canaan, on the other hand, inhabited the Middle East, along with a small part of Mesopotamia. The Hamitic peoples include the Sumerians, the Ethiopians in Ethiopia, the Nubians, the Libyans, the Egyptians, the South African and North African peoples. The native Indians of India, the first inhabitants there, also descend from Ham and are considered Hamitic peoples. The Aboriginal people of Australia, whom many request a video about, are also Hamitic peoples, and we will make a specific video for them if desired. They are descendants of Ham. The Dravidian peoples in India are clearly Hamitic, as their skin tone is black, reflecting the descent from Ham. The name Phut or Put means bow and refers to the tribal warriors and hunters of Africa. The name Cush, as mentioned earlier, means black, referring to the darker skin tone of many African peoples. Mizraim gave rise to the Egyptians, who were also black but with a brown skin tone. The descendants of Canaan were the Canaanite peoples, such as the Sidonians, Phoenicians, Hittites, Amorites, Jebusites, Hamathites, Girgashites, Hivites, Sinites, and Zemorites. They inhabited Lebanon, Jordan, and the Middle East region together with Canaan. These peoples were enemies of the ancient Israelites and were defeated and killed by them in great battles because they were considered practitioners of sorcery and witchcraft, which displeased God. Now, let's address one of the most interesting peoples, the indigenous peoples. What is the origin of this people according to the Bible and genetics? The Bible reveals to us that Togarmah was the father of many peoples, as described in Ezekiel 38 verse 6. Togarmah is considered the ancestor of the people with slanted eyes, due to the meaning of his name, which refers to eyes that are slanted or broken. It has been proven that indigenous peoples descend from Asian populations. In other words, the origin of this people lies in the lineage of Togarmah, a descendant of Japheth. However, there is also a strong mixture with the Hamitic peoples, or at least one Hamitic tribe, due to the brown skin tone observed in many ancient indigenous peoples, such as the Maya, Aztecs, and Incas. It is important to note that skin tones vary considerably among different indigenous peoples. Some Native Americans have lighter skin that closely resembles Asian populations like the Japanese. Therefore, the origin of the indigenous peoples inhabiting the Americas is rooted in the descent of Japheth, specifically from Togarmah, but also has a strong genetic influence from the Hamitic ancestry due to the brown skin tone. The slanted eyes are also a characteristic reminiscent of Asian populations, and this has been scientifically proven through genetics. Hence, indigenous peoples have their origin in Asia but also possess an influence from Hamitic ancestry due to their skin tone. In other words, indigenous peoples are descendants of both the lineage of Ham and the lineage of Japheth. Those with a more pronounced brown skin tone have a stronger ancestry from the line of Ham. An example of this is Native Americans, commonly known as Redskins. They are descendants of both Japheth and Ham. Now, let's explore the descendants of Shem to understand genealogies and the origin of humanity. This is a topic that is not often addressed but should receive more attention from various channels. Though somewhat controversial, it is a subject that unites all peoples because Shem and Ham were brothers, sons of the same father and mother, Noah and his wife. Shem is Noah's firstborn son, and the biblical text states that at the age of 100, he fathered sons named Arpachshad, Aram, Ashur, Lud, and Aram. Shem lived many years, reaching 600 years of age, and it is estimated that his descendants reached up to the 10th generation, including the patriarch Abraham. The sons of Aram were Uzi, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arphaxad is the ancestor of Eber, who gave rise to many Semitic peoples, especially those who inhabited Mesopotamia and the Middle East. Among the Semitic descendants were the Elamites, Assyrians, Akkadians, Chaldeans, Sabaeans, Syrians, Arameans, Hebrews, descendants of Abraham, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Israelites, Midianites, among others. On Tuesday, a special video will be released about Shem and the Semites, the firstborn of Noah, to delve deeper into their lineage, so don't miss it. On the final screen, we will leave the playlist of our series, The Origin of Peoples According to the Bible, and in the description, there will be some videos related to the book of Genesis. I ask you to leave your like on this video and share it with people who are curious about genealogies and ancient peoples. See you soon.
So as you can see from that film, the Ashkenaz, who are now Askanazi Jews, are not the descendants of Abraham. They're not from the line of Shem. They're from the line of Japheth. So when you see Jews with blonde hair, blue eyes, red hair, white skin, looking German, Turkish, Russian, and European, those are not the descendants of Shem. They're not the people of the promise. The people of the promise come from the descendants of Shem through Abraham. These people are really usurpers of the promise, fakers, pretenders, who, well, I shouldn't really say that, even if they converted to Judaism, okay, because there's a lot of very good Jews. Now, don't get me wrong. Now, there's some good Jews. There's some very good Jewish people out there of the Ashkenazi descent, and they are devout Jewish people, Messianic Jews, devout Jews of the Torah and Judaism. I mean, excellent teachers, professors of the Bible, writers of literature. But we're not talking about those Jews. We're talking about the ones that Jesus said are a synagogue of Satan. See, because there is a group of those Jews who have no interest in God and they have no desire for God whatsoever. They hide behind the Torah and they use religion as a dodge or a hustle. And in Jesus' day, Jesus told them that they were not the seed of Abraham, because they kept saying, we have Abraham as our father. And Jesus said, if Abraham was your father, you'd love me. But yet you're trying to kill me, a man who's told you nothing but the truth that I heard from God. And he said, so if you were of God, he that's of God hears God's words. You hear them not because you're not of God. Then he told him, you are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do, for he was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth. He's a liar and the father of it. So, and he stayed on these vipers, he called them vipers, snakes, because they were usurpers. They were hiding behind the Torah in order to gain power and control to do things without being questioned and living on a standard above everybody else. And that's what these Ashkenazi, Luciferian, New World Order Jews are doing today, along with a lot of the other sons of Japheth, Europeans, and Russians, and Scandinavians. These people of Japheth, these sons of Japheth, and they have also convinced other people from other tribes, China, Japan, the Middle East, to join them in their quest for global domination over the rest of us and to bring in this new world order. And you got to understand, man, these things are just true. If you keep believing the lie, you're going to always be deceived and you'll never come to the truth. And Jesus said, be careful that no man deceive you. It is the truth that sets us free. And all these years we've been told these other things about the Jews and about what truth is and about who's this and who's that, and we've been lied to from the beginning. They don't teach you to learn how to think. They indoctrinate you with a certain philosophy or way of thinking that suits the power elite. And if you go on YouTube and look up Norman Dodd, he used to work with the government. He used to examine the tax-exempt charities, and during his examinations, he learned a lot of things and was approached by some people who actually asked him, how can we change the history and change the books, the school books, the learning books, the books we learn from, and reprint their own books and make their own line of scholars that would teach what they wanted us to learn. And they did that. So a lot of what we get out of the universities and schools is just handed down from these power elites that only let us know what they want us to know, and the rest is hidden from us. The rest is hidden. So you can't just allow yourself to just believe what you hear. Do the research, look it up for yourself, look through it, and you find out a lot of stuff you thought you knew, you didn't actually know. I had to find out. And I know that these Jews, these Ashkenazi Jews, and that's why you say, why are the people persecuting the Jews? They're not persecuting the children of Israel. They're not persecuting Abraham's seed. They keep going after these Askanazi Jews because they keep trying to take over. Everywhere they go, they try to take over and set up their New World Order system for Lucifer. And people aren't, and people just not having it. They're just not having it. And the sad part is that because of them, the good Ashkenazi folks, good Europeans, good people suffer because of these folks. Like right now, Netanyahu, he's talking about they have to kill all of the Palestinians because Amalek did something to the Jews 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, and remember what they did. He wasn't even there. He wasn't even thought of. But yet, he's remember what the Amalekites did to your people, and you know, okay, God punished them for that and for the other nasty stuff that they were doing. But what does that have to do with the situation today? That was thousands of years ago. See, he's just trying to justify his bloodlust and his need to just murder and kill people, kill all these people and get them off of that land so they can take it. That's how these people are, and that's why they're persecuted, and that's why they're driven out everywhere they go. There is a few more. I'm almost done. There's a few more videos that I want. Well, I think it's one or two more videos I need you to see to wrap this whole thing up, and we can get a conclusion about this thing, and we can see exactly what's going on in Palestine is going on in Palestine. You know, they want that land. They want that land there. They want a state of Israel. They want the Palestinian people off of that land, and they will kill every one of them to get that land, to take that land away. And they don't want to share it. They're not interested in sharing it. They're interested in taking it. But they have no legal right and no claim to it. And Britain did not have a right to give that land away to those Askanazi Jews. Just didn't. So, without any further ado, let me get this other video for you. And this is going to wrap it all up for you and make it all clear. Trust me on this. It's amazing. This is going to really lock it in where it should be. All right, watch this.
Also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were...
Right, I was born into a family that believes in this.
And does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really? And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before. And
so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I've blacked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to,
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in our family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not, or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back. The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean,
no.
It's not a very
we kind of know
thing.
that.
I just want to point that out.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies. But anyway, so you witnessed the sacrifice.
Right. When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
Uh-huh. Power. And so, were you ever used? Were you ever used yourself?
I was molested. I was raped several times.
Mm-hmm. And what's your mother doing?
She's
in all of this. What's her role in all of this?
I'm not exactly what her role is. I haven't, recovered all of my memories, but her family was extremely involved.
Mm-hmm.
She brought me to it. Both of my parents brought me to it.
And where is she now?
She lives in the Chicago metropolitan area. She's on the Human Relations Commission of the town that she lives in, and she's an upstanding citizen. Nobody would suspect her.
Were you raised with a sense of right and wrong, Rachel?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I had both. I mean, to the outside world, everything we did was proper and right, and then there were the nights that things changed, that things just got turned around. What was wrong was right, and what was right was wrong. That's what helps to create somebody, to develop MPD.
Mm-hmm. Multiple personality.
Right,
disorder.
right.
Now, in your family, did you all call it worshiping the devil?
No,
Rachel?
I don't know.
It was just evil, these things you did.
Right. Well, I said it was evil, and they said it was good. There's a book that I had just come across called Lilith's Cave, which is a book of Jewish mysticism and supernatural, and there's a lot in that book that relates to what I, endured when I was a child.
So, as you can see, from a Jewish-speaking woman herself who was involved in Satanism, her family was involved in Satanism, and she says just not her family, but there are many Jewish families that are involved in Satanism. So, stop being so religious. It's so tied down to church doctrine. Read and learn the truth. Look at things. You have a brain. You have eyes. You have sense. Use them. All Jews are not good Jews. And some of these Jews are flat out devil worshippers, and they want you dead. They want me dead. They want the world for themselves. And that's about the bottom. That's all it is to it. They want to set up a one world government for the devil. And they have world leaders, rich, powerful world leaders, all coming together with them to achieve this idea. You got people in the music industry right now that are making music and putting spells in the music and witchcraft in the music to make young people kill each other. All in the name of Satan. And they're telling you that they're doing this. They're covering one eye. They're throwing up satanic symbols. They're doing rituals on stage, and people still flock down there and cheer them on like they're the best thing since sliced bread. And they are doing these things for your destruction. And the only reason why they're doing it is because they are getting paid lots of money to do it. So they'll sacrifice you for their luxury. And you got to know it. It's the truth. So there's another video. I hope this is the one. I hope this is the right one. That I want you to see. And this is very interesting. And so without any further ado, let's watch.
2 years ago, from my research, I'm convinced it's much more serious than that. It's more than a loose-knit network. It is a conspiracy. In 1784, a copy of this document was sent to the illuminist Weishaupt and delegated to foment the French Revolution. You mean the Illuminati was responsible for the French Revolution? Yes, absolutely. The courier was struck dead by lightning as he rode through Ratisbon on his way from Frankfurt to Paris. What about a little divine intervention there, huh? The police found the subversive documents on his body and turned them over to the proper government authorities. After careful study of the plot, the Bavarian government ordered the police to raid Weishaupt's newly organized lodges of the Grand Orient and the homes of some of the most influential associates, including the castle of Baron Bassen-Sonderdorf. Additional evidence thus obtained convinced the authorities that documents were a genuine copy of a conspiracy by which the Synagogue of Satan had controlled the Illuminati at the top, planned to use wars and revolutions to bring about the establishment of one kind or another of a one-world government, the powers of which they intended to usurp as soon as it was established. In 1785, the Bavarian government outlawed the Illuminati and closed the lodges of the Grand Orient. In 1786, they published the details of the conspiracy.
The new order of the world, our enterprise is now a success.
He said these blind slaves say they are free and highly educated, even as they march behind, notice this word, signs. Have you ever taken time to analyze a sign or a billboard or a logo?
We'll start up here. In 1784, an act of God placed the Bavarian government in possession of evidence which proved the existence of the continuing Luciferian conspiracy. This explains the previous 9 pages, goes into it in detail. We don't have time to do it completely. Conspiracy. Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit-trained professor of canon law, defected from Christianity and embraced the Luciferian ideology while teaching at Ingolstadt University. In 1770, the money lenders who had recently organized the House of Rothschild retained him to revise and modernize the age-old protocols designed to give the Synagogue of Satan ultimate world domination so they can impose the Luciferian ideology upon what remains of the human race after the final social cataclysm by use of satanic despotism. Weishaupt completed his task on May the 1st, 1776. It's a communist holiday, isn't it? May 1, 1776. The plan required the destruction of all existing governments and religions. In 1776, Weishaupt organized the Illuminati to put the plot into execution. The word Illuminati is derived from Lucifer and means holders of the light. Weishaupt's revised plan required his Illuminati to do the following things to help them accomplish their purpose. 1, use monetary and sex bribery to obtain control of people already occupying positions in high places in the various levels of all governments and other fields of human endeavor. Once an influential person had fallen for the lies, deceits, and temptations of the Illuminati, they were to be held in bondage by application of political and other forms of blackmail and threats of financial ruin, public exposure, and physical harm, and even death to themselves and their loved ones. Number 12, told those present that they must use their wealth to have candidates chosen to public office who would be obedient to their demands and would be used as pawns in the game by the men behind the scenes. The advisors will have been bred, reared, and trained from childhood to rule the affairs of the world. Number 13, control the press. Number 16, infiltrate into the secret Freemasonry to be used for their purposes. That's been documented many times. Number 17, expound the value of systematic deception, use high-sounding slogans and phrases, and advocate lavish promises to the masses, even though they cannot be kept.
I will not forget the wound to our country and those who inflicted it. I will not yield. I will not rest. I will not relent in waging this struggle for freedom and security for the American people. So I don't know where he is. Nor do, I just don't spend that much time on it. We will not tire. We will not falter. And we will not fail. Terror is bigger than one person.
And I remember he was telling me how you're going to see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places, and there's going to be this war on terror, of which there's no real enemy.
Who knows if he's hiding in some cave or not? We hadn't heard from him in a long time.
Operation Northwoods, the plan called for innocent people to be shot on American streets. This is the Pentagon. For boats carrying refugees fleeing Cuba to be sunk on the high seas. For a wave of violent terrorism to be launched in Washington, D.C., Miami, and elsewhere. People would be framed for bombings they did not commit. Planes would be hijacked using phony evidence, all of which would be blamed on Castro to justify an invasion of Cuba 40 years ago. An aircraft at Elgin Air Force Base would be painted and numbered as an exact duplicate for a civil registered aircraft belonging to a CIA proprietary organization in the Miami area. At a designate time, the duplicate would be substituted for the actual civil aircraft and would be loaded with selected passengers, all boarded under carefully prepared aliases. The actual registered aircraft would be converted into a drone, remote controlled plane, their word for it. Takeoff times of the drone aircraft and the actual aircraft would be scheduled to allow a rendezvous south of Florida.
I mean, he's been tested unlike any other president. This is 9/11. We have in this past year made great progress in ending the long era of conflict and Cold War. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be.
He argued that the use of any and all means to reach their final goal was justified on the grounds that the ruler who governed by the moral code was not a skilled politician because he left himself vulnerable and is in unsuitable position to his throne. He said, those who wish to rule must have recourse to cunning and to make-believe because great national qualities like frankness and honesty are vices in politics.
Fellow citizens will meet violence with patient justice, assured of the rightness of our cause, and confident of the victories to come. In all that lies before us, may God grant us wisdom, and may He watch over the United States of America.
A World Bank to destroy the economy of this country and to bring in global governance.
So who got the money? To financial institutions in Europe and other countries. Which ones? I don't know. $500 billion and you don't know who got the money?
Now, the first of a two-part conversation with former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan.
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
I'm not about to give up control.
The basic problem is that we are living in a virtual reality. We're living in a totally controlled environment, an environment that is been created by mass media. Now, many people, especially young people, accept unquestioningly the reality that is presented by the media. Popular culture, movies, television, music, carry messages about how society works and how people should behave. And so entertainment is not value-free. It has ideological content. It presents a worldview that influences the people who watch the programming.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
A new world order can be created.
Huge transformation for Europe to make. They are now going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented because of our leading role.
Right now, Israeli parliamentarians are considering a law that will require prospective Israeli citizens to declare loyalty to Israel as a Jewish democratic state. Their mission? To prevent Arab men mixing with local Jewish girls.
It's important to safeguard our traditions, culture, history, and identity, because without this, who are we?
We're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. In time, Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural.
And they are bringing in a one-world Luciferian system with one church, one government, and one financial system. And they have to kill at least 2/3 of the population, 2/3 of the world population in order to do it. And they are actively doing it. We are living in the last days, in the end times, in a time that is the most important time in the history of mankind. We can't afford to be stupid or ignorant. We got to keep our awareness up, keep our eyes open, pray, look to God, look to Jesus, because he is the Savior of the world. Right now, all power is in his hands. So we got to look to Jesus, and we have to have faith in God and in one another. And we can get through this. So tell somebody, warn everybody, comment on this video, like, subscribe, so that the more you comment on it, it improves the ranking in the rankings. And more people get to see it. There's one more video I'd like to show you before I say goodbye. I don't know if I did yet. Let me just see what Pike has to say.
As the brigadier general in the Confederate Army. Following the war, Pike was jailed for treason. He was quickly pardoned by a fellow Freemason, President Andrew Johnson. Among eventually becoming a 33-degree Mason and a top leader of the Ku Klux Klan, Pike was also believed to be a Luciferian. He claimed he was able to summon Lucifer at will as the Grand Master of the Order of the Palladium. Palladism, or traditional Satanism, an ancient Luciferian cult, was then introduced to the inner circle of the Masonic lodges. This influence has flourished into modern-day Freemasonry in the super rites of the upper degrees. Industry, entertainment, the CIA, Congress, and our military leaders are inundated with Freemasonic palladism, or a Luciferian New World Order. What follows are the chilling predictions, or better yet, instructions of Albert Pike's 3 world wars, funded in great part by the House of Rothschild. From a letter that he wrote to 33-degree Italian Illuminati head and mafia founder Giuseppe Mazzini, dated August 15th, 1871. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agentures of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments, in order to weaken the religions. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery and of the most bloody turmoil. Then, everywhere, the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. A bizarre letter indeed. Will we allow this madness to unfurl unabated, or will we put a halt to it before it's too late? John Bound, Infowars.com.
This Third World War, where all the other nations will get involved in taking one side or the other and just fight to pure exhaustion. With the confusion and the decay of morals and the value system going out the window, yeah, people will be without a compass. They won't know what to do, which way to go, or what's right or what's wrong anymore. It's just going to be horrible. But that's what they want. They want the destruction of the present world so they can build their new one. And they're using Israel and Palestine to start it. So, this is Elder James wishing you all a good night. I hope you enjoyed the show today, the message today. I hope it gave you some enlightenment as to what's going on and why it's going on. And believe it's all biblical. It's all biblical. It all has to do with what Jesus said would happen and with biblical prophecy. So I hope you pray for me tonight, and I'm going to pray for you. Let's pray for each other. And remember, God loves you. I love you. And if we hang in there together, we're going to all be all right. Keep your faith in God. Keep your faith in Jesus. And I'm praying for you. Good night and sweet dreams.